Welcome to UPL, University for Leaders, and my name is Ricardo Bonafé. You are watching Advanced Leadership Diploma, and the course of today is Organization and Planning Events. The introduction. The organization and strategic planning of great events allows us to carry out the work of the kingdom of God. Each project that we set out to do will be more effective if we followed the principles of the science. We do not ignore that the entrusted greatest project to the church is the evangelization of the man and the woman, and whom everything must be based on this commission. For that fundamental reason, it derives the different projects. Lesson Number 1, organization and planning events. We will study what the organizing an event is and its importance in this lesson. We will also take a look at the 7 fundamental aspects that a person must know at the time of organizing and planning an event. The development of each one of them will be done in a brief way, reserving a deeper explanation for the chapters subsequent to this model. Objectives of this lesson. There are 3. At the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to explain the importance of the organizing and planning events in the church, to define the fundamental aspects that a leader must know, how to organize an event or to make a project, to apply this knowledge in the organization of an event or project. A, organizing events. The definition is this: organizing and planning an event is the application of principles and the development of stages in order to carry out an activity or an event with the purpose or goals set beforehand. When these types of events are carried out in the church, it is what the idea of edifying the kingdom of God. 2, the importance of organizing and planning events. The church must be constantly organizing events, focused in fulfilling the Great Commission. The church must never adopt a passive behavior, but must be mobilizing constantly the leadership and its members in ministries like evangelization, teaching, social witness, among others, in order to fulfill God's purpose. B, organization steps and events planning. We will be studying in this section the steps commonly known when we organize an event. 1, a vision coming from God. Often events are made by envy or competition. The certain thing is that in the Christian ministry, everything that becomes must be a product of a vision that is born in the heart of God, and that we are only instruments for their accomplishment. The definition is as follows. The vision is something non-existent, that is to say, a dream that God puts in our hearts, and that often it is something beyond our capacity. So a vision coming from God is 1. 2 is the communication of the vision to an intimate group. Once we have received the vision of God, the following step is to communicate it to our intimate group. The endorsement or the refusal of our intimate group always will be a signal that we are not in center of the will of God. 3, to elaborate the work plan. Once the support of the intimate group is had, the logical step is to elaborate the plan of action of the event, which will contain the objectives, output, responsible activities, and other aspects that are required. There's an activity taken as a basis, Annex 1, elaborate a plan of action or event or project. 4, to elaborate the budgets. The financial resources are indispensable for the accomplishment of any event. So the elaboration of a budget is pertinent and substantial part of the organization and strategic planning of an event. 5. The announcement to the public. Once the entire previous step is done, it is time to make the announcement public to all the people related to our organization, ministry, or church. At this moment, it is when the greatest possible endorsement is due to create the expectation of the event, and to obtain this announcement can be done through massive means of communication like being the radio, the television, the press, and social media. 6. The execution of the event. The execution of the event, following everything step by step, is explained in the following chapters of this material. The responsible people initiate the execution of the project in which they have themselves jeopardized. This is the part in which the dream, that is to say, the vision, becomes a reality. 7. The presentation of a report. The last step when an event is organized is the evaluation and the presentation of a complete report to all the groups involved in the celebration of the event. In the following chapters, one will deal with greater detail about some of the previous statements in this chapter. Lesson 2, communication. The objectives of this lesson. At the end of this lesson, the student will be able to define what is communication, explain the importance of the communication in the organization and strategic planning, and defining the elements that take part in the communication. This is very interesting. Communication is the mechanism to present to other people what we think and what we feel. The effects of the communication can cause any class or of reactions to the other person that can go from the greatest anger to the most immense joy. A, concerning communication. The effective communication in the organization and strategic planning. It has been said that to organize an event is to do something by means of others. There is the importance of the communication. The biblical paradigm, par excellence, is the construction of the wall at the time of Nehemiah, and the role of the communication played in the elaboration of this project. B, the elements and the process of the communication. There is the sensation, the presentation, the interpretation, the communication and the organization of the ideas. That's all very important for the elements. Those are all the elements of the process of communication. The sensation, when we speak of the sensations, we're talking about the senses that can be stimulated by communication. When we talk about the perception, perception is the answer of the person that is stimulated by their senses. When we talk about the interpretation is the way we understand the stimuli. According to it, the rubbing, the experience, the education, and the familiar antecedents. Thus, it is going to be the answer of the person. The communication and the organization of the ideas is a good preacher that must make an effort to organize his ideas and to reason his words, to think, to speak, and not to speak, to think. Wow, very important. The necessity of communication and obtaining the opinion uniformity. The first force that motivates a group to communicate is to manage the opinion uniformity, also to obtain the group flow. The second reason to work hard for the opinion uniformity is the necessity of social reality. That the three mechanical causes for the group uniformity are the following ones. 1, discrepancy of opinions within the group. 2, pertinence to the group. And 3, cohesion or attraction to the group. C, classes of communication. There are 4 classes of communication. The first one is formal or informal. The second is individual or collective. The third is oral or written. The fourth is horizontal or vertical. The first one, formal or informal. are formal when it follows the official channels of the organization, respecting the order of the subordination. The content of this communication is of official character. That is to say that it treats only subjects that already has been approved. The communication is informal because it runs of mouth in mouth until it receives attention on the part of the administration. The only advantage of this type of communication is that they can lead to light some problems that are occurring in the development of the project and not yet has been of the knowledge of the authorities or the leaders. 2. Individual collective. As the title says, it is the individual when one goes to a single collective person, when one goes simultaneously to several people. Oral or written, the oral communication is immediate, direct, and personal, but it can badly be understood and be forgotten. The written communication is understood better, does not forget easily, locks up a commitment. So it must like very well what it goes away to write. The written communication must be clear and conscious. Horizontal, vertical. The vertical communication occurs in two-way traffic of above downwards or either or above downwards ascending. They are the orders, rules, instructions, authorizations, requirements, and prohibitions, generally of head to subordinations. Up or down, upwards, ascending, they are information, reports, suggestions, requests, and compliments. The horizontal communication is at the same level and occurs in the meetings, committees, and assemblies. Lesson number 3. The human relations. At the end of this lesson, the student will be able to define what is the human relations, to differentiate between the communication and the human relations, to define and to differentiate the different classes of communication. A. Difference between human relations and communication. In the human relations, it is fundamental that the leader is a completely pleasant person. As he says the saying, he is very pleasant to be important, but it's more important to be pleasant. To be pleasant is to think about the others more than in yourselves. It is to make an effort to say and to do what is in the interest to others without letting fulfill the required thing by the organization. B. The results of the good human relations. We have affirmed that organization and strategic planning and to carry out projects through other people, that is to say that other people do what you want. This demands a special technique in the deal with the others. C. Knowing the individual at its basis of the success of the human relations. There is the philosophy, there is the conduct. The philosophy is of each person is the function of their beliefs and their attitudes modified by a system of values. The beliefs to a person consider the truth. Attitudes, they are ways, dispositions, and feelings like hatred or the love. System of values, it is the importance or value that an individual gives an attitude to believe. The conduct, the behavior is a function of its philosophy modified by its necessities, affected by its frame of reference, its past experience, the present situation, and its inspirations, aspirations. The conduct is the necessities, the frame of reference, the last experience, the present situation, and the aspirations. Lesson number 4, observation and appreciation. The objectives of this lesson, at the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to differentiate between the observation and the appreciation. Define the elements that must be taken into account in the appreciation. A. Concept and considerations. The first step for an organization and strategic planning of an event or project is to the observation. The first that is due to make an activity is to observe. It seems that it's an essay work, but it's not. Sometimes when observing, we use simply our senses. In other occasions, we make use of tools to measure the observed thing, but the observation would not have made sense if we did not process the data that have been obtained. A leader has to know how to appreciate, since it's not possible to be led without appreciation. An event or project will never be able to be carried out of it in necessity is not observed and appreciated. B, elements that must be taken into account in the appreciation according to the organization. Thus will be the elements that would be taken into account. If we spoke of a church, the elements that can be the missions, the construction of the temple, a retirement, rights of money. If we spoke of an executive institution, the elements change by examples, opening up education centers, use of modern technologies and aim. If we speak of an evangelistic event, they are factors completely different from the mentioned ones previously. Elements that must be taken into account in the appreciation is 1, the human elements. It's 2, communitarian necessities. And 3, the spiritual necessities. The human element, the leader will be working with people who will help to carry out proposed goals so she does not have to forget that. Communitarian necessities, it is extremely important that the Christians, leaders insensible to the necessities of their community, is to say its congregation. 3, the spiritual necessities. These are those that they had to do with the salvation of not turn the building of the church. C, the role of consultation in the stage of the appreciation. There are failures in the consultation. The first case is the alliance of Joshua with the Gibeonites. It demonstrates what can happen to him, to all the leaders who make hurried decisions, trusting his criterion and without consulting the will of God. Some advise to wisely take the criterion from organization. Everything must be consulted. First of the individual, weighed through occasional or planned conversation with some members of the congregation. Make sure that the only select few know your plans. We suggest that you not only consult the group that you are sure that will support, but also for the opinion of those brothers and those sisters who do not participate actively or who to a certain extent are to your opposite. It is good to have a balanced opinion. Lesson 5, planning. Objectives of this lesson. At the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to define what is planning, explain the importance of planning, define the factors that help us to fulfill the objectives in the planning, number the 5 characteristics of a plan, define what the following passage is strategy. A, definition of planning. After the observation, there is a planning and is considered the second stage of the administrative process. Here is where the planning of objectives and procedures is done. In the stage of appreciation or observation, it is investigated what can possibly be done. In the stage of planning the objectives and procedures, one determines exactly what is going to be done. Why is it important to plan? Some people can think the time of planning is a waste of time, but this time, in fact, an investment that ensures the success of a ministry. The first thing we need to decide is where we can go to, an objective, and what we are going to do to get there, procedures. The objective or the importance, because as an old saying says, he that does not aim to nothing gets nothing, or he that does not look for anything finds nothing. How to fulfill the objectives? The fulfillment of the objectives, the culmination of the process of planning, and for the person or the organization, event, or project is of great importance in fulfilling the objectives created. It is that sense that what is next sets the standards to reach objectives proposed in a plan. There's a few good statements here. You have to read the book. Something very important when the objectives are written up is to remember to perceive the 6 basic questions. What is really wanted to be done? How we will try to reach it? Why we will try to reach that objective? Who will be in charge of the work to administrate technical personal level? When we will begin and when it will be finished? And where will the work be done? B. Characteristics of the planning. There are 4 characteristics. 1, feasibility. 2, objectivity and quantification. 3, flexibility. 4, unity. Feasibility. This means that what is planned has to be attainable. Objective and quantification. This is about the necessity to make use of all statistical data, market studies, and other data of the time of planning to reduce the risk to a minimum. 3, flexibility. It must be clear from the beginning that there may be changes or improvisations along the way that were not in the original plan. 4, unity. With this, we are talking about the fact that we have assigned activities and or tasks to specialized groups of the congregation. Each group or committee must formulate a small plan to fulfill what has been entrusted to them, but must not forget that its plan must be in agreement with the general plan of the church to develop the project. C, strategy. The strategy is a fundamental in the achievement of success of an event or a project and has to do with the synchronization of all the factors so that the vision is fulfilled. In strategy, there's 2 things that we have to keep in mind: the strategic planning and the interchange of strategies. The strategic planning, said in simple words, is simply that what is going to be done, it is done with intelligence, taking into account each detail and each aspect to obtain results or accomplish objectives at its highest level of excellence. Interchange of strategies, a talk about the necessity to change when in time been has spent and the planned thing is not being accomplished. You need to evaluate the necessity to change certain activities or the plan as a whole. Lesson number 6. Material and personal preparation. At the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to define the actions to prepare an event, explain as to select to the personal of an event or project, to explain the importance of the personal training, to describe as to make the personal positioning. The third stage of the process of the organization and strategic planning of an event is the preparation of materials and personnel. The interrogation. We have a section of personnel and training of personnel and positioning of personnel. Selection of personnel. The personnel must be selected in agreement with the task desired to develop and not the opposite. This means to try to adapt the person to the task and not adapt the task to the people. Training of personnel. The success of an event requires that it has the capacity and is qualified. In that sense, the organizer must enable each person who participates in the event in the ministry that corresponds to him. In that sense, the following has validity. 3. Positioning of personnel. Trained personnel must be in the most suitable area, that is to say, where they are more productive. The leader does not have to only know where the place each person must be That also means but provided the best conditions for them so that they develop their tasks. Lesson 7. Structural and functional organization. At the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to define what is organization and explain how to create an organizational structure and task of an event of our project. A. The organizational structure. The fourth stage of the process of organization and strategic planning of event is the organizational structure. Definition. Organization. It comes from the Greek word syntaxis. Syn with and taxis order. That is to say, to put order. Many people reject everything that smells organization, and they have declared themselves free and independent. But nobody can be isolated. If somebody has left an organization group, form another independent group, but it continues being organized because there is a leader to follow and to serve. Let us the following illustrations. B. Organizational charts. The organizational structure can be illustrated well through an organizational chart. You have to look at the book to see the chart. It's amazing. Organizational chart. Lesson 8. Coordinated and supervised execution. The objectives of this lesson. At the end of this lesson, the student will be enabled to define what is the execution of a project, explain the importance of the motivation in the execution, describe the role, the place, the authority in the execution of the event or the project, to explain the importance of the supervision and the execution. A. Definition of execution. The fifth stage of the process of an organization and strategic planning is the execution. This execution must be coordinated and supervised. 1. The execution begins motivating the participants. The motivation is not simply the impulse to want to do something. It is the sensation to know the reason this project is being done. Next, we have indicated 5 ways to motivate a person. Those 5 ways, read it in your book. 2. A good execution requires a good authority. Without doubt, at the time the execution of the project is required that there is a major in the town. That is to say, a responsible person who directs the event. In that sense, the personnel who participate will have to submit to that leadership. 3. The execution demand excellent supervision. One of the key functions of the leader who is directing the work is to supervise it. This will allow him to identify any errors and execute its correction. B. Qualities of the person whom it supervises. Sense of responsibility, own initiative, and to know how to convince. To be flooded of enthusiasm, to know how to delegate, to know how to coordinate, to be firm in the discipline, and to be persistent. How to supervise. See, how to supervise in that manner. There is presented a comparative picture to differentiate 3 activities that normally are used or understood incorrectly. Please read that in your book. It is awesome. Lesson number 9, evaluation and control of results. The objectives of this lesson. At the end of this lesson, the student will be able to differentiate the evaluation of control, to explain the importance of evaluation, the control in the accomplishment of an event or project. A. Definition of evaluation and control. The sixth and last stage of the organization process is the evaluation of the control of the results obtained in the moments. Definition 11, evaluation, to compare the obtained results with the expected outcome. Definition 12, control, partial evaluation during the development of the project or activity. It gives a report of how the objectives are being fulfilled. For that reason, planning and control always go hand in hand. B, differences between control and evaluation. Time. The control is applied while the project is being developed. However, the evaluation is applied when the project is finalized. Way. The control is direct and immediate. However, the evaluation follows an order and a careful study is done of all the information obtained. Results. The control allows you to make adjustments and corrections. However, the evaluation allows you to honor, to distinguish, and to compensate those that have participated according to your discretion. C, uses and results of the evaluation. Sometimes we think the evaluation and the control are only used in the education process, but really these are not exempt from our lives. We are always applying them in a practical way. A housewife makes the process of control and evaluation when she's going to the store or the market to buy food and compares what she spent the previous week with what she spent today. With the advances of technology, it's having some people could excuse themselves saying that they do not take control of their activities because they do not have access to a computer or special software, but that excuse is inadmissible since there is paper, pencil, and notebooks to take control. D, evaluation of personnel. To positively evaluate the actions of each person, the leader must be positive, amiable, and be considerable when evaluating. In the first place, emphasize the positive points of each disciple and the discipline afterward, if any. First of all, you must maintain a balance. 2, continue with the training. 3, compensate or encourage. 4, improve the administration. E, errors of evaluating the personnel. There are 2 errors which are committed generally at the time of evaluating the personnel. These errors can be committed in the religious circles. Error number 1, overestimate. Error number 2, underestimate, and opposite of overestimate. Thank you for listening to Ricardo Bonafé in this UPL University for Leaders. You are watching Advanced Leadership Diploma, and the course that we just went through is Organization and Planning Events. Have a blessed day.